Hi, everyone. I'm Keith Ritchie, Senior Outreach Counselor for Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority, or KHEAA. Today, we're going to be walking through the 2324 free application for federal student aid, otherwise known as the FAFSA. We're going to go step by step through this form to help our viewers have a better understanding of the format of the FAFSA, the questions that it asks, and how to answer each question. For the purposes of this video, we're not really going to talk about financial aid eligibility or even the rationale behind the questions. We simply want to give an easy to follow guide to help making the completion of a FAFSA a little bit easier. If you would like more information about the different aid programs that are available or any information about college in general, check out some of our other YouTube videos on our channel under Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority. But without further ado, let's get started with our line-by-line walkthrough of the 2324 FAFSA. To access the FAFSA, you'll go to studentaid.gov, and it'll look like this page here. Now, keep in mind, for today's demo, I'm actually using a demonstration site, so this is not attached to a live FAFSA, and I'll be using some placeholder information as if I were a dependent senior in high school who lives with parents. Okay, so that'll be the information that I'll be inputting into this particular FAFSA. So when you go to studentaid.gov, this is where it will start you out. You'll want to hit the first option where it says, I'm a student, want to access the FAFSA form. It'll then give you a few options to choose from. If you already have an FSA ID, which is your username and password to complete the FAFSA, go ahead and hit login to continue. If you've not yet created an FSA ID, my advice would be to go ahead and do that now by clicking on Create an FSA ID and follow the instructions. Again, I'll be using some placeholder information, so let me go ahead and put that in right now. As you create your FSA ID, make sure you put it somewhere safe because this is going to stay with you each and every year that you're going to complete the FAFSA and have anything to do with higher education. So it's a really important thing to hold on to. And also, because it is going to carry some personal information, make sure you don't share it with anyone else. Once you log on with your FSA ID, it's going to give you two options to choose from, the 2223 and the 2324. Remember this, any year that you complete your FAFSA, you want to make sure that you're completing it for the year in which you're wanting to receive the financial aid. So let's just say we're a senior in high school and we're going to be graduating in May of 2023, and we're going to be taking the summer off and starting college in the fall, which would be the fall of 2023. We want to make sure that we have this highlighted, the 2324 version, okay, not the 2223 version, even if it's in that current school year. It's always going to be for the year in which you're receiving the aid. So we have our 2324 year selected, and we'll go ahead and get started. On the next page, it's going to ask you to create a save key. This is like a temporary password to be used to save your spot in this form. So if you need to stop at some point and save and come back later, this will get you back to where you left off. I always tell people to put in something easy to remember, like a 4-digit number. And that's what I'm going to do now. And hit continue. On the next page, it's going to have some great information that you can read through that'll help you understand a little bit more about the FAFSA and the different sections and questions that it'll ask. But since we're going to be walking through it anyway, we'll go ahead and skip that for today. When you go to this next page, it'll actually show you the 7 different sections of a FAFSA. All right. And it'll show you where you're at each stage. So the very first section that you complete would be the student demographic information, like your social security number, your name, your date of birth. Now, the beauty of using an FSA ID is a lot of this is already going to be completed for you if you logged in with that at the beginning. Again, I'm using some placeholder information based on the demonstration account. When you hit continue, it'll then ask you for student email and phone. All right. This is all so far talking about student information. Later on in the FAFSA, it will switch and ask for parent information. The next page will ask you for your address. when you complete this for the first time, just make sure everything looks correct. Double check it because a lot of that information will pull in from what you put on your FSA ID. The next page is going to ask you about residency. Since I put that we live in Kentucky, this is going to ask if we lived in the state of Kentucky for at least 5 years. If I were to put no to that, it'll ask me what my state of legal residence is. So I'm going to put Kentucky. The next question will be, did you become a legal resident of Kentucky before January 1st of 2018? If I were to answer no to that, it'll ask me to put in the month and year that I became a legal resident of Kentucky. So for purposes of today's demonstration, I'll put that I've lived in Kentucky for at least 5 years. The next question will ask, are you a U.S. citizen? And you'll have 3 options to choose from. You can put, yes, I am a U.S. citizen or U.S. national. No, but I am an eligible non-citizen. Or no, I am not a citizen or eligible non-citizen. One thing to keep in mind on any question here on the FAFSA, your best friend is going to be this question mark off to the side. If you need a little bit more explanation of what they might be referring to or how to answer it, always rely on that question mark because it'll help you make sense of some of these questions. So for instance, for the citizenship question, it gives a lot more detail about what the different categories could mean. This page asks about student education. The first question is, what will your high school completion status be when you begin college in the 23-24 school year? So we'll hit high school diploma, but you could also say GED, homeschooled, or none of the above. What college degree or certificate will you be working on when you begin the 23-24 school year? And it shows you a drop-down menu of all of your different options. So you could say first bachelor's degree if you're looking at a 4-year route, or an associate's degree if you're looking at a 2-year school. Notice how they have 2 different types of an associate's degree to choose from. You have your occupational or technical programs, as well as your general education and transfer programs. So that would be, for instance, if you were to start out at a community and technical college, take your general education courses with the pathway of eventually transferring to a 4-year school. You can also pick certificate diploma, as well as teaching credential program. That would be a non-degree program at that. And then college graduate and professional degree. Since we're a senior in high school, starting college for the first time, we'll say we're working on our first bachelor's degree. Next question is, will you have your first bachelor's degree before you begin the 23-24 school year? And the answer would be no in that example. What will your college grade level be when you begin the 23-24 school year? Now, this is one that can trip some people up. There are a lot of options to choose from. Never attended college first year would be the best selection in this question when it comes to a senior graduating from high school starting out in college. Now, let's say, for instance, you were to take dual credit courses throughout high school. You'll still want to put never attended college, even if you have some credits that you've earned already. Okay, you're going to want to put never attended college. The next question is going to be, are you interested in being considered for work study? So you can put yes, no, or don't know. Now, I will say this, my recommendation would be to put yes, because that'll keep you in the running to be potentially offered work study as a part of your financial aid package. You can always turn it down later if it's something that you decide not to do. But if you put no or don't know, it's going to decrease your chances of being offered work study. So for this purpose, we'll go ahead and put yes. The next page will then ask about your driver's license. Now, keep this in mind. You do not have to actually report your driver's license number or your driver's license state on this page. You can actually leave this blank. And in fact, I encourage students to do so regularly. So we'll leave it blank for today. The next page is going to ask you about foster care and parent education. The first question will ask, are you a foster youth or were you in the foster care system at any time? Then it'll ask, what is the highest school completed by parent 1? Now, you'll notice it says parent 1 or parent 2 for the second question. It doesn't matter who you put for parent 1. It can be mom or dad. They're asking this to see if maybe you might be eligible for certain first-generation college scholarships. Notice here at the top, once we complete that question, we've already got our first section taken care of. And now we're going to start section 2, the school selection. The first thing we have to do is put in our high school. So you can search through state and city. And you can even put in your high school name if you would like. But I'll just go ahead and hit search with the city and the state. When you hit search, it'll bring the results up. And I'm going to put that I currently attend Holmes High School in Covington, Kentucky. Then it'll just ask you to confirm and just double check and make sure that that's correct. The next page is then going to have you put in what colleges you would like to send this FAFSA to. Now, here's the thing to keep in mind. You don't have to have your mind made up when you complete a FAFSA. In fact, you can put in up to 10 colleges anywhere in the country. So when I search by city and state, it'll give me a lot of different options that would be close by based on what I put into that field. And then what you do is you just go through the list and check which schools that you would want to put in. Again, you can put in several colleges and they'll all receive this FAFSA. So I went ahead and put in 3 just for today's demonstration, but again, you can put in up to 10. The next page is going to ask you about housing information. So for each college that we added to the list, we need to go into the drop-down menu and let them know what our plan is for housing. You can put on campus, with parent, or off campus. Those are your 3 options to choose from. Keep in mind, not every college out there has on-campus options, so you may want to do a little bit of planning ahead to see if it's even going to be feasible to live on campus at certain places. This particular section, when you put in your housing plans, it doesn't hold you into that. But what it does is it is nice to give the colleges a heads up on what you're thinking at that point. You can always change your mind later. Again, if you have any more schools that you would want to add, it gives you an option to do so there. Now we'll say, let's say, you complete this thing in October, and maybe a month later, another college pops up on your radar. You can always save this thing and come back in later and add more schools if you would like and resubmit. So don't think you have to have it all figured out when you complete this the first time. As we progress through the FAFSA, we now enter the dependency section. This section is used to determine if we need to provide parent information or not. The first question it will ask is, what is your marital status as of today? Now, remember, at this point in the FAFSA, it's still strictly referring to the student, not the parent. So to answer the marital status question, we could put single, married or remarried, separated, or even divorced or widowed. Now the FAFSA wants to know if the student has any dependents. The first question is, do you now have or will you have children who will receive more than half of their support from you between July 1st, 2023 and June 30th, 2024? Now, this can be a little bit of a tricky question, and I think it's best to break this down into a couple different pieces. The first piece is, do you now have or will you have children during this time frame? The second piece of this question refers to financial support, when they say that these children would receive more than half of their support from you during that time frame. We'll put no. The next question will be, do you have dependents other than children or spouse who live with you and who receive more than half of their support from you between now and through June 30th, 2024? So this could be anyone other than a child or a spouse that the student is providing more than half of their support. As we progress further into the dependency sections, it will begin asking about various other circumstances. For instance, are you currently serving in active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces, or maybe even a veteran? At any time since you turned age 13, were both parents deceased? Were you in foster care or a dependent or ward of the court? As determined by a court in your state of legal residence, are you or were you an emancipated minor? And then finally, does someone other than a parent or a step-parent have legal guardianship of you as determined by a court in your state of legal residence? If you can answer yes to any of these, you would be considered an independent student. But as we stated earlier, in this example, we're a dependent student who lives with parents, so we're going to put none of the above. The next question asks, on or after July 1st of 2022, were you homeless or were you self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? Based on how we answer these questions, the FAFSA has determined that we are, in fact, a dependent student. And what that means is that we need to provide parent information on the FAFSA. And it allows you to select that option. I will provide information, or you can even select the option that I'm unable to provide parent information about my parents. One thing to note about this, when they say I am unable to provide parent information, they're not talking about not necessarily having the info readily available as you're completing the FAFSA. This would be more like a circumstance such as we're not sure the whereabouts of our parents. So we'll put, I will provide information. If you do get at that fork in the road where you do not actually have parent information with you at the time of sitting down to complete this FAFSA, you can always save the FAFSA by going here to the top and coming back later once you receive the documentation that you'll need from your parents. The next page is going to ask about whose information we need to provide in order to complete the rest of the FAFSA. So we can put that my parents live together, my parents are divorced or separated, and we live with one parent more than the other, or that my parents are divorced or separated and I live with them both equally, or I was legally adopted. If we live with both parents, we're going to report information about both of them in the coming pages. Now we enter section 4 on the FAFSA. And this is a turning point for us in our application, because now, notice, it's going to start asking about parent information as opposed to student information. So the first question is, as of today, what is the marital status of your parents? You can put never married, unmarried and both legal parents living together, married or remarried, divorced or separated, or widowed. After I put married or remarried, it's going to ask for the month and year that my parents were married. On the next page, it's going to have us begin to fill out information about our parents. Then on the next page, it will ask for the same information, but for the other parent. Again, it doesn't matter which one goes first or second, mom or dad or even step parent. Then it will ask about the parent's state of legal residence. Have your parents lived in Kentucky for at least 5 years? Notice how that question looks eerily similar to one that we answered earlier. Now it's going to ask about parents' dependents. The first question is, how many other dependent children do your parents have? So we're not counting ourselves on this particular question. So let's just say that this is a family of 4. The 2 parents, myself as a student, and a sibling. So I'll put 1 for my sibling. And this would be, the second question would be about other dependents other than children who now live with the parents, currently receive more than half their support from your parents, and will continue to receive that support during this time frame. I'll put 0. Once you get to this page, double check the number of the household size to make sure that it matches your situation. So in this case, it has us as the student, our 2 parents, and the 1 sibling for a household size of 4. Then it will ask about the number in college. So they want to know out of the 2 dependents. So in this situation, it would be myself as the student and my sibling. How many will be college students during July 1st, 2023 and June 30th, 2024? You'll always want to put at least 1 because you'll count yourself. If my sibling was also attending college during this time frame, I would put a 2 there. Now the FAFSA will go on to ask about parent information in regards to income and taxes. First question it'll ask is in regards to the tax filing status. For 2021, have your parents completed their IRS income tax return or another tax return? So we'll put already completed, but you could also put will file if they are planning to but haven't yet, or not going to file if they have not completed the tax return for 2021 and do not plan to do so. The next question asks, what type of income tax return did the parents file for 2021? And then finally, for 2021, what is your parents' tax filing status according to their tax return? So this can be found if they've completed a 1040 toward the top of that tax document. Based on our information, the FAFSA recommends that we use the IRS data retrieval tool. Now, when you do this on a live FAFSA, I highly recommend using this because it'll be the quickest, easiest way to get accurate tax and income information that's needed to complete this. But since this is a demonstration of the FAFSA, I'm going to skip this part so that we can manually input all of our information that would come off of that 2021 tax return. First question it'll ask is, what was your parents' adjusted gross income for 2021? What's nice about the FAFSA is it gives you clues on where to find the answers to each of these questions. If your parents have already completed their taxes, you don't want to guess, you don't want to estimate on any of these types of answers. You want to make sure that you get it right down to the dollar. So this tells you where to find it. This amount is found on IRS 1040, line 11. Then it's going to ask, how much did your parent 1 earn from working? So this would include wages, salaries, tips, etc. in 2021. And this is where you would find that information. And then finally, it'll ask the same thing for parent 2. Now the FAFSA asks us to enter the amount of parent income tax paid for 2021. This is the total amount from line 22 minus Schedule 2, line 2. Remember, if negative, they want us to put a 0 here. Now the FAFSA will ask if your parents have any of the following items in 2021. So you can look through each one, such as combat pay or special combat pay, student college grant and scholarship aid reported to the IRS, education credits. So you want to continue to go down this section to see if any of these applied to your parents in 2021. Again, it's going to show where to find most of these. Did your parents have any of the following items in 2021? The first is asking about child support paid. Later on, it'll ask about child support received if it applies. Earnings from work under a cooperative education program offered by a college, and finally, taxable earnings from need-based employment programs. Now the FAFSA ventures into parent untaxed income for 2021. The first question asks about child support received for all children, not just the student who is completing the FAFSA, and it's for the entire year. So if the parent receives child support on a monthly basis, you'll want to add up those totals to get to your overall amount for 2021. The next question refers to housing, food, and other living allowances paid to members of the military, clergy, and others. And then the FAFSA dives into payments to tax-deferred pensions and retirement savings plans. For this question, you'll actually want to pull out their W-2 forms and look at boxes 12A through 12D and see if any of the following codes here are listed. If so, add up those totals and report it into the box. The FAFSA continues into veterans, non-education benefits, and also other untaxed income not reported, such as workers' comp, certain disability benefits, etc. One thing to note about that particular question, if you were to pull up the extended response from the FAFSA, you do not have to include untaxed Social Security benefits. So if they receive untaxed Social Security benefits that happen to be disability, you do not have to report that on the FAFSA. Now the FAFSA goes into parent assets. Now, up until this point, all of the income and tax questions were based on 2021 information. But now, if you notice, it's asking as of today. It wants to know if our total current assets exceed $0. Now, when you complete the FAFSA, it may have a different number than that. If you put yes to that question, it will then continue with 3 additional. The first is, as of today, what is your parents' total current balance of cash, savings, and checking accounts? As of today, what is the net worth of your parents' investments, including real estate? But remember, you do not need to count the value of the parents' home. So you don't count the house that you live in, even if it's paid off. What they're referring to would be things like second properties or maybe rental houses. And finally, as of today, what is the net worth of your parents' current businesses and or investment farms? So when we're talking about businesses on the FAFSA and reporting assets, you don't actually have to report business assets if it's deemed a small business. The way that the FAFSA defines a small business is fewer than 100 full-time employees. And in terms of farms, if it's a family farm in which your family lives on that farm and works on that farm, you don't need to report that as an asset either. If it's a separate deed, a separate property, that's really what they're referring to in terms of investment farms. Now we've made it to section 6 on the FAFSA. And notice we're transitioning back to student information for this section. Similar to the parent financial sections that we previously completed, now the student is going to answer the same type of questions that it did for the parents. So they want to know, did the student in 2021 complete an IRS income tax return? So the student can put already completed, will file, or not going to file. For this purpose, I'll put not going to file. Because we didn't file an income tax return in 2021 as a student, we're not eligible for the IRS data retrieval tool. That doesn't mean it won't ask us some additional questions about our income, though. As you can see here, the next question on the FAFSA is, how much did you earn from working in 2021? I'm going to say $2,000 from our part-time job. Then it will ask about student additional financial information, such as child support that the student paid, earnings from work under a cooperative education program, and taxable earnings from need-based employment programs. So if none apply, you can put 0 for each of these. Now we've reached the student untaxed income section. And like the previous income and tax-related questions, it's referring to 2021. The first asks about child support received for all children. Now, this gets a little tricky because if you remember a few minutes back, it asked the same question, but it was in the parent section. And now it's asking it in the student section. So remember this, it's who is receiving the payments, not necessarily who is it going toward. So if the parent receives the child support for the children, including the student, we would have reported that in the previous section with the parent information. This would be if the student themselves would be receiving child support for children. And if you continue through this untaxed income section, you'll see that each of these questions were the same questions that it asked parents previously. The one exception to that is the last one here at the bottom. Money received or paid on your behalf, such as bills, not reported elsewhere on this form. This includes money that you received from a parent or other person whose financial information is not reported on this form and that is not part of a legal child support agreement. So it could be things like help with a cell phone bill. So let's just say, for sake of argument, that the student's grandparents are paying for their cell phone bill each month. And we'll say it's $50 per month. So what we would do is we would put in the total year amount. So $50 a month times 12 months would be $600. Similar to the parent section earlier, the FAFSA wants to know about student assets as well. So these 3 questions are referring strictly to the student. As of today, what is your total current balance of cash savings and checking accounts? Let's just say it was $500. As of today, what is the net worth of your investments, including real estate, but not the home you live in? So if that doesn't apply to the student, we would put $0. And same thing here. If it doesn't apply to us, we can put 0. Well, now we're in the home stretch. And this is one of the most important pages on the FAFSA because this is a checkpoint where you can go through and see line by line every response that we put on the FAFSA. It's really important to take your time on this page and just look through for any possible typos or incorrect responses. And that way, if you do find something, you can go back and make those corrections. Before we sign and submit our 23-24 FAFSA, the federal government asks that we complete a brief survey. The survey is going to ask about things like gender, race, and ethnicity. None of our responses will have an impact on federal aid eligibility or state aid, and they're not required. You can always decline to answer these questions. Now we've made it to the first signature page. Since we've already input our FSA ID at the beginning of this form, we check this box to agree to the terms outlined, and we can hit Sign FAFSA Form. Now on the signature status page, you can see that it went through because the student signed with the FSA ID. This does not mean that the FAFSA is completed, though, because if you notice, parent signature is still needed because we never input the parent FSA ID. So what we would do then at this point is provide parent signature. Now it will ask that the parent agrees to the terms outlined above. There are several different ways for a parent to sign a FAFSA, but the best way, in my opinion, would be to complete an FSA ID if possible. If they're eligible to complete an FSA ID, that would be the quickest, easiest way for this to get processed. If they're unable to provide an FSA ID, there are other options to sign and submit, though, such as printing a signature page and mailing it in. The FAFSA will still be processed. It'll just take a little bit longer for it to go through. This is what that signature page would look like. And this is where they would mail it to. Congratulations, you have reached the end of the 23-24 FAFSA walkthrough. If you'd like to learn more about federal and state aid opportunities, I invite you to check out KHEAA.com. That's KHEAA.com. And also remember, no matter where you live, anywhere in the Commonwealth, you're represented by at least one KHEAA outreach counselor. So we have a team of people available if you have any specific questions about your FAFSA, and we're always willing and able to help. Good luck with your academic adventures, and happy FAFSA filing.